Hello, welcome to Reframing Behavior Management, Opportunities for Youth to Learn. Very happy to be with you today. And I'll go ahead and just introduce myself before we jump into the content. My name is Jennifer Jones. I'm the Professional Development Manager at Primetime Palm Beach County. It's really exciting for me to be presenting about this topic today. Just a little bit about myself. I have two young adults now. Well, one teenager, one young adult, one 16 and one 20 years old. And this topic is near and dear to my heart. This is something that I was trained on and learned about, about 15 years ago, and then used these strategies not only with my own children, but also in after-school programs, in the classroom, and really saw how a lot of these strategies helped me to relate better to youth and to students, and to also really see their behavior as something more than just, they're trying to make my life difficult, right? I think we can all relate to that. And I just wanted to kind of give that framework about these strategies and really invite you today to just really be able to take in the information, and hopefully it will be very useful for you in the next weeks, months, years, as you're able to apply a lot of these really practical strategies around behavior management. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so vision and mission of Primetime, just to give you a little bit of information about our organization before we jump into the content. Primetime's vision is for children and youth to reach their fullest potential in school and life. And our mission is to help children and youth succeed by strengthening and expanding quality in the out-of-school time field. So what have we been up to in 2020, 2021, which has been for all of us, challenging year, very different year, right? With a lot going on. We were able to serve more than 22,000 youth in our programs, as well as 2,500 practitioners. So through professional development trainings, we're able to give incentives and scholarships to after-school professionals as well. And then also we reached 148 after-school and summer programs with our services. You can see our website at the bottom there, primetimepbc.org. So definitely check us out if you'd like more information. So just that's a little bit about myself and about Primetime. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into our learning objectives today. So before I talk about learning objectives, I want to make sure everyone has the handout that for this presentation. So if you haven't downloaded that, it is a fillable PDF, so you're able to type right into it if you would like to just leave it up on your screen. But if you have not received that yet, or you haven't downloaded that, just pause this presentation, go ahead and do that, because we will be writing or typing into that document today. There'll be some reflection questions. So again, if you haven't done that, just please pause the video and go ahead and do that, and then we'll see you back in a moment. Okay, so learning objectives. So at the end of this presentation training today, you will be able to determine the social emotional skills youth need to promote positive behavior, right? That's all of our goals, is really working with youth, teaching youth and students those positive behavior skills. Also, you'll be able to relate to the needs of youth for belonging and significance. We're going to talk about we all have that basic need to belong and also to feel significant in this world. You'll also be able to identify the mistaken belief, or we sometimes call it mistaken goal, underneath the negative behavior exhibited by youth. And we'll really dive into that, and you'll get a good feel for what that means during this time. And then last but not least, you'll be able to practice supporting youth in managing their feelings and taking responsibility for their actions, right? And that's, again, that really important life skill of youth being able to not only, be aware and manage their emotions, but take responsibility for what they did, and then how, realizing how it impacted someone else, including us as the adults working with the youth. So, all right. So everyone should have that handout packet now, or that, as we call it, guided notes. We have some fill in the blanks there. So on the second page of that handout packet, you'll see there's a question about what are your intentions for today? What would you like to learn or get out of today? So go ahead and just pause the video for about a minute. Just think about, why did you pick this presentation, this training? What would you really like to learn from today? Just so we can set our intentions and you can make sure you get the most out of this presentation. Okay. All right. So now that you've really thought about what you would like to learn today, what your intention is, let's go ahead and do our welcoming ritual. And I want to talk about gratitude, because a lot of times when we're talking about behavior management, sometimes it's really easy to kind of just get kind of heavy and frustrated, to be honest, because a lot of times when we're talking about behavior management, there are frustrating things happening in the classroom or in the after-school program. We may not know what to do about a certain youth's behavior, or a couple of youths that might be, bullying, or just not following the rules, or not listening. So those things are frustrating. So I want you to think about what you are grateful for. Okay, so it can be personal. It can be something about the youth that you work with, your job, what you really love about your class. And again, just think about one or two things that you're grateful for. And in your guided notes there, you do have that question, that fill in the blank there. So just take a moment and let's just really kind of give a moment to think about and then acknowledge what we're grateful for. So go ahead and pause the video for a moment and just spend a moment writing what you're grateful for. Okay, so hopefully everyone has had a chance to do that. And again, just really thinking about when we're working with youth as well, right? They have a lot going on, as we do as well as adults. But one of the social emotional learning skills, or SEL skills, that we can teach youth really easily is being able to think about things we're grateful for. And that could be even something that you do with your youth and have them write down something, maybe one thing a day or one thing a week, and then they can share it with each other and really build, relationships in your class or in your program. We want to think about, before we dive into the strategies for behavior management, all of these strategies, and really getting cooperation from youth depends on that relationship that we have with the youth and students in our class or after school program. So I just want you to think about that in terms of that rapport you have, that relationship building that you do every day with your youth and your students. And as we're going through these, just keeping that in the back of your mind, that relationship with youth and building that relationship is so critical, because when you do need to redirect or display or implement some of these behavior management strategies, we want to make sure that relationship is there and that trust is there between the student or the youth and yourself as the adult in the classroom or in the after school program. All right, so let's look at the 6 SEL domains, right? So we're in the SEL Summer Institute. We're learning lots about SEL in general for adult SEL, as well as really imparting that to the youth we work with. So let's just look at the Weichert Center for Youth Program Quality, which really has evidence-based standards for after-school and out-of-school time programs. They have developed these 6 SEL domains: emotion management, empathy, teamwork, responsibility, initiative, and problem solving. all of these are these SEL domains or SEL skills that we want youth to develop and to grow in. Today, we're really going to be focusing on emotion management. So in the latter part of the presentation, we'll be really discussing and talking about how do youth not only, before they can manage their emotions, they have to be aware of them, right? So as it says there, ability to be aware of and constructively handle both positive and challenging emotions. So really the important word there's lots of important words in that, it really is constructively handle, right? A lot of misbehavior or behavior that's challenging in the classroom or in the after school program comes from youth not being able to constructively handle their emotions, right? Sometimes they don't even know what those emotions are. So really being intentional and explicit about helping youth to realize what emotions are coming up and then being able to handle those constructively is what we're going to be talking about in terms of the specific skills for behavior management today. Okay. I'll just give a moment for you to just look at that slide and look at all the SEL domains. Okay. So now this is a little bit of reflection before we dive into the concepts here about reframing behavior management. So when youth act out or misbehave, so I want you to just right now think about a youth in your program or in your classroom that misbehaves. I'm sure everyone, including myself, we have someone that pops in our mind right away that's challenging us, right? So I want you to think about that particular youth or maybe a group of youth. But when youth act out or misbehave, I believe they are blank. And some of you may, want to say, oh, I believe they're just struggling, right? So we want to kind of give that PC answer per se. I want you to really just write down the first thing that comes to your mind, because what we want to look at is how are we thinking about this youth, right? What images are coming to mind, or what even beliefs do we have that we may not even realize about this youth or about what's going on or what that behavior is about? Okay, so when youth act out, misbehave, I believe they are blank. In your handout packet, you have that fill in the blank. So go ahead and just take a moment now, pause the video, and just really no one's going to see this, right? So don't necessarily try to be PC about it. We just want to really examine what are we thinking about that youth and be honest, because that's going to help you as we go to the next slide and really try to think about and examine what our beliefs are. And then we can shift those beliefs, because that's a lot of our reactions and our responses comes out of that belief that we may not even realize we're having. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video a moment, and then I'll see you when you get back. Okay, so maybe some of you put when youth act out or misbehave, I believe they are trying to make my life difficult. And if you're honest, or they're trying to be annoying, or whatever it may be that comes up for us, right? So I really want to look at this model of what's really going on. Okay, so we talk a lot about the behavior, right? Let's really identify the specific behavior and how do we change that behavior to get the cooperation we want, to get the youth to follow our rules, to get the youth to comply, right? That's a lot of behavior management, is really trying to motivate or incentivize youth to kind of do what we want, which is important for classroom management, right? But let's look at specific youth's behavior. When a child's behavior is less than what we want it to be, or not following the rules, or there's conflict, right? So we see that behavior on the surface. underneath that behavior, it's not always what it seems, right? And we like to say behavior is communication, right? Just really let that sink in, right? Behavior is the language of needs. That's another phrase that that they use a lot in positive discipline. So behavior is the language of needs. So if behavior is communication, then when we think about what we see on that surface above the water there, that iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is that behavior, right? So it's rolling around, the youth rolling around on the floor when it's homework time, and we just see him or her rolling around on the floor, or pushing someone, or running in the hall. All of these things that's what we see. Underneath that, what we can't always see, what's not on the surface are a lot of things, right? And we can see from this visual, there's a belief that youth or student has that they don't even probably realize they have. Just like in the last activity we did, where we wrote down what we're thinking or believing about that youth who's misbehaving, the youth that's misbehaving also has, a belief behind that behavior or underneath. They also have a need for belonging and significance. Okay, so we're going to talk in a moment about kind of, how we see the youth when they're doing that behavior, but also thinking about what's going on underneath the surface, right? So you see words here such as social skills, security, self-esteem, the need for connection, the need to belong, thoughts, sleep, right? Those physical needs, basic needs, right? Food, sleep, shelter, warmth, all of those things, and also belonging and feeling like they're significant. And we'll talk about how those match up with specific behaviors that they may be displaying. Okay, so let's look at our lens, right? So we started by kind of really digging deep to see how do we see this youth that's misbehaving? What do we think about them, right? If we're honest, kind of uncovering that and just being aware of it is that first step. Then we looked at what's underneath the behavior that we're seeing. Now, if we see the child maybe as, and again, if we're being honest, right, we look at that left side as stubborn, needy, bratty, or manipulative, right? How many times do we say, oh, they know what the rule is, right? They know that they shouldn't be doing that and they're just manipulating. So I've heard that a lot before, and I felt that way myself about some youth, right? So we want to make, when we see youth that way, right? When we have that lens, we then want to make them do better. We want to make them comply. We want to also sometimes teach them who's boss. They can't treat me that way. I'm the boss, right? So again, just really thinking about, do I sometimes do that? And it's human nature. And it's really because we just don't know what else to do, if we're honest, right? With some youth, it's just that simple in terms of we just don't know an alternative at this point. But if we look at that middle column, we see if we can see the child as having a need to belong, having a need to connect, to feel like they have some healthy power, we can help kids and youth feel better so that they can do better, right? So youth who feel better, do better. And we know this, but really to keep that lens on. We can also teach them life skills. So we talk about in positive discipline and when we reframe behavior management, really looking at every behavior as an opportunity for youth to learn, right? So what skills do youth not have when they are not listening, for example, right? So we can say, oh yeah, they know that they should be listening, but they don't have that skill yet, right? That paying attention, that focusing skill, that's something we need to work on, right? So it actually is a helpful tool to think about a behavior as teaching a life skill that the youth or the student doesn't have yet. So really kind of getting a little more analytical and curious rather than the judgment of, ah, gosh, they're just so needy or manipulative or stubborn. No, wait, there's a skill they need to learn here. What is it? And how are we going to teach it to them, right? So that's that column on the right, which is they're just lagging or lacking in skill development, right? They're not there yet. I often tell the story about my son. He's 20 now, but 16, 17, 18, it's like, he should have these skills, right? So some skills that he was lacking. And in my mind, I kept saying, no, he's 17 years old. He should absolutely have X skill, whatever it was that he didn't have, right? And it's like, well, he doesn't. So for whatever reason, didn't happen along the way. And so how now do I support him and help him to develop that skill, right? So that's really our job as the teacher in the classroom, as the after school practitioner or director, really thinking about that's our job to what we call guide by the side, right? So especially for those older youth, secondary youth, middle school, high school, we can guide by the side and say, yeah, okay, we have a skill now that we need to develop a little bit more. So again, thinking about teaching those life skills and what is our lens. So I just want you to take a moment, reflect on that in terms of kind of switching your lens. All right. Just wanted to give you a moment to reflect. Okay, so let's move on to what we call mistaken goals. So in order to see what is below that surface or the iceberg, we really need to have some kind of buckets, I'll call it, of different goals or beliefs that youth may be trying to communicate to us with their behavior. And we wouldn't really know that unless we really think about it and we maybe even jot down some themes around their behavior, right? So, and we think about what happened before the behavior, what's happening now, and kind of like a detective, right? So we're just trying to figure out, gosh, okay, I see now that when youth misbehave, they're trying to communicate something to me. There's a need that's not met there, and there's a skill that needs to be developed, but what are they trying to communicate, right? So really being able to show them that you care, creating a space for them to talk to you, and actively listening to them, really listening, which is hard to do when we're upset or when we are frustrated because of the misbehavior, which that often happens, right? That's our human nature kind of reacting. So I want to go over these specific mistaken goals that the behavior may be trying to communicate. And then we'll dive in next into a chart that will really be a nice guide for you to have to really look at when the behavior happens, especially if it's a recurring behavior. Okay, so the first one, and I'm just going to go over these briefly and we'll dive into them next, but it's undue attention. So sometimes youth, think of the youth that's always trying to get our attention, or we're trying to give the directions for the lesson or for the activity, and you have the youth all just raising their hand or running up to you. That's, the undue attention, right? Special service. Youth that sometimes aren't behavior issues because maybe they're putting their head down on the table during homework time in the after school space, or maybe during a specific subject that you're trying to teach, they're putting their head down or they're kind of checked out. They may feel like they can't do it. Maybe they've given up, right? So that can become a problem, right? Because they're not able to get what they need done. And they may want you to give them what we call here special service. Now, this is not saying that some youth definitely need more support than others, or when we're looking at, youth with developmental delays or disabilities. So we're not specifically talking about that population of youth per se, but just looking at youth that may be kind of just feeling like they can't do it, right? And so they're getting that special service, which then is that what they're trying to communicate. Misguided power, right? So I feel like every time I do this training, we always, everyone can think of that youth that they just have that power struggle, right? So youth that, won't line up when you tell them to line up. And it's not because necessarily that, they're trying to be the class clown, but they're really just trying to exert their own power and control. So we have that, and then we have revenge. Revenge, we're going to give an example of next. So I'll skip over that one for now. And then we have inadequacy or avoidance of humiliation. So it's similar to special service, where that youth feels, again, they've just given up, they can't do it. So instead of really wanting you to do that for them, whatever it is, they just don't want to do it. And it's very hard to get them to do whatever it is. And it could be really a lot of different things depending on kind of what the subjects are, what the activities are. So just kind of feeling that, that worthlessness or lack of significance. Okay, so as we're thinking about these, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, because I want to show you in your handout packet, you also have, it's called a mistake and goal chart. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up now. It's over here on my other screen. And what I'd like you to do is also turn to that in your handout packet, and let's look at this over here. Okay, so I'm going to be kind of looking over here as I'm looking at my other screen. So this is called a mistake and goal chart. This mistake and goal chart looks like a lot. It can be overwhelming at first. I'm going to walk you through it, and we're going to look at specifically revenge, which is down here. But before we look at that, I want just to point out the different columns to you. So this is basically the child's goal is, and it goes through each of those mistaken goals that we just went over. And then it'll say, if the parent or teacher feels, so sometimes we use this, many times we use this for parent education as well to help parents. And this can also be if the, after school practitioner, so you can use this for any adult that's working with youth, right? And a lot of times we ask, or I'll have people ask, well, why are we talking about what the parent or teacher or adult feels in the moment? And so really it's because many times we're able to find out and discover what the youth or student is trying to communicate to us when we think about how we feel when the behavior happens. So again, if one of your youth or students is, rolling around on the floor during homework time, for example, how do we feel about that, right? So we're looking at the second column to say, do we feel annoyed, irritated, worried, or are we feeling here angry and challenged, threatened, or are we feeling hurt, disappointed, disbelieving, right? There's behaviors that we're just like, we're hurt by them, right? Especially when they're kind of targeted at us. Or are we feeling kind of despair, hopelessness, helplessness? Like, how do we help this youth? Okay, so really looking at how the parent or teacher feels, so how you feel as the adult, then how do we tend to react, right? When these things happen, when youth misbehave, are we, how are we reacting? So let's look at revenge. So an example, a quick example, and this actually happened to me when I was working with youth, is, and we were all sitting, all the youth were sitting down. I was giving the directions for the next activity that we were going to do. And this youth just kept talking to his neighbor. And I kept asking nicely to please, pay attention, because they would need to know what the, what the directions are. And other youth weren't able to listen when he was talking. And so I had to essentially, call him out in front of everyone. And I thought that I did it in a way that was respectful. But then when it was time to line up to go out to recess, he refused. And he just sat there and he just said, nope, I'm not doing that. And you can't tell me what to do. And then he actually stood up. And I'm about 5'2". So he was, it was middle school. So he was, taller than I was, kind of got into my face and was like, you're not going to tell me what to do. You can't tell me what to do. I'm tired of you trying to control me. And it was just a lot of, and I automatically thought, oh, this is power, right? This is the need that he's trying to get met here, or the mistaken goal that he's trying to communicate is power, right? So when I went and looked at this chart at the end of the day, because I was just trying to figure out what is going on here. First, I said, how did I feel about that, right? So I really felt, instead of angry and challenged and threatened, I felt hurt. I felt like, wow, I thought we had a pretty good relationship. I thought, he had been defiant in the past, but I just really was looking at this and I didn't really feel like angry so much as I felt kind of like disappointed and hurt that he was just being really mean to me. So if you look at, so as we kind of go through this, if you look at this third, which is it tends to react by, so I did react kind of like I took his behavior personally. I was thinking like, how could he do this to me? And now he's, kind of trying to, do this in front of all the other, kids. And so basically, as we're looking through this, it really rang true that this was probably revenge. And interestingly, as I thought about it, I thought, my gosh, just prior to that, it made sense. He felt embarrassed because I had to, really kind of, call him out, so to speak, in front of everyone, that he was retaliating, right? So if we look at what his belief was, it rings true that he thought, not so much that he doesn't think he belongs per se, but at that moment, he felt embarrassed, right? He felt hurt himself. So basically his coded message, and this is what this column is here, coded message was, I'm hurting. And he just wanted me to validate his feelings. So basically, as I looked at this to kind of think of what am I going to do next, there are some proactive and empowering responses that once you figure out what the child's mistaken goal could be, or once you kind of think about it, then you can go to this last column here on the chart and really think, okay, or read what the proactive or empowering responses could be, and then try one. If it works, then okay, got it, and then also, as we were talking about teaching life skills, right? What else could I teach to that youth that would help him in the future when he feels hurt or embarrassed, to be able to manage those emotions? So we're going to talk about that in a moment. So if I went down here to the chart and I saw acknowledge hurt feelings. So what could, I'm thinking, and don't take behavior personally, build back the trust, share your feelings, apologize, show you care. So there was a lot I could do the next day, right? So as we are thinking about what are some empowering things we could do for youth, right? So let me just be clear, it wasn't okay. It wasn't acceptable that he did that he reacted that way or displayed those behaviors. And I addressed that as well, but really getting underneath what was really going on for him and what coded messages he was trying to communicate to me, and unbeknownst to him, right? It wasn't like he was thinking, I'm hurt, please validate my feelings. Those were all really just subconscious things, but that was the message that he didn't know how to communicate to me. Okay, so let's move on with the PowerPoint here, because we'll get specific about this particular mistaken goal and what you can do about it. And I'll let you know what I did. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen again. okay, of how to handle mistaken goals once you kind of can be a detective and realize, you know, what it might be, or guess. You're really doing an educated guess, right, to try to see what it could be. All right. So here, how to handle mistaken goals. We looked at the mistaken goal chart, and you have it in front of you in your handout packet, right? And really remember that second column, you want to look at how you felt when the youth displayed that negative or challenging behavior, which is kind of a switch, right? That's why we are reframing this, because usually we don't think about how we're feeling, but it really gives you that idea of what the youth might be trying to communicate to you, depending on how. Because remember, that could have been a power mistaken goal that he had, or could have been a revenge. And the way that I knew the difference was really looking at that second column to say, yeah, how I felt was more hurt. It wasn't necessarily that I felt angry, okay? So as we're really helping youth have opportunities to grow their skills, you know, if you, the adults, feel hurt or find yourself saying, I can't believe you just did that, like we just looked at the chart, this is your clue that the mistaken goal of the misbehavior might be revenge. And that was what happened in my case. Now, we can focus on, again, validating hurt feelings. And I'll tell you how I did that in a moment in the next slide. And really thinking about solutions for the underlying issue, right? Not being afraid to make amends ourselves, right? To say, you know, I was thinking about it and I realized I probably shouldn't have called you out in front of the whole group when you were talking to your friend while I was giving directions. You know, there's a way that I could have done that better, and I apologize for that. And so really, that's modeling how to really fix a mistake, you know, which we want youth to know that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to, you know, do things that might hurt people unintentionally, right? And then how do we realize that and go back and make amends, okay? And then strategies for managing strong emotions. So we're gonna talk about how when those emotions come up for youth, how they can realize what they are, be aware of them, and then be able to handle them constructively, okay? So some of the language you can use, because sometimes it's hard to come up with that in the moment, is the coded message for youth that are displaying behaviors where they're trying to get revenge either on you or on another student, is really, again, validating their feelings, right? So some examples could be, I'm guessing you feel hurt by something and you want to hurt back. So it's kind of just giving them that language or that thought about, yeah, that, you know, that could be, and they may not realize it even after you say it. So giving them some time to process is good. No wonder you feel upset when it seems you always get in trouble while others don't get caught, right? So kind of helping them to frame like what they might be feeling. The next one is, it looks like you're having a bad day. Do you want to talk about it? So again, we're saying looks like, seems like, I'm guessing, because we don't want to assume that we know what's going on for the youth or the student, right? So we're guessing, we're curious. Remember, what's underneath the behavior, we're trying to figure it out. So we're asking these really open-ended questions, but we're also at the same time possibly validating emotions, right? And helping give the language for those. You could also say, I care about you. Why don't we take a break and try again later? So that's another example of really, again, building that connection, letting the youth or student know that you hear them, that you see them, that they belong. That's really critical and foundational for any of the coded messages or mistaken goals that a youth might have, okay? So as we're teaching youth this important skill of being able to be aware of their emotions, whether they're positive or challenging emotions, just that SEL skill of managing emotions, we want to, again, help youth to just be aware. Sometimes as adults, we might not even know, like, I'm just feeling like kind of icky, kind of frustrated right now, right? So we're aware of that emotion, but we don't know why per se. Or we just, maybe snap at someone and we're like, gosh, what was that about, right? Like, why did I do that? What was I feeling? And so that is a skill that we can practice to be aware of what the emotion is, and we can teach youth that skill as well. Okay, so I'm going to show you a clip of a short video. Some of you may have seen this movie before, and it's a really cute one that for younger youth, especially for elementary school, it's a fun way to really teach emotions. Okay, so let's, I'm going to go ahead. I think it's embedded in here. Yep. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it's fairly repetitive with different emotions, but this is a fun way for youth to kind of even think about what emotions they may be having. Okay, so I'll go ahead and play this here. Let me make sure that my sound, yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's just a fun way in order to kind of give an example to youth about feelings and emotions and being aware of them, right? Something happening and then, so what was that emotion, right? And that's just the first part of that emotion management SEL skill. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd like you to take out your packet and just take a moment, and you'll go ahead and pause the video in a moment. But let me just show in the packet here. Okay, so we have number 5, fill in the blanks. And what I'd like you to do there, again, is just in a moment, pause the video, and we're going to talk about the video that we just watched. But I want you to fill in the blanks to model how you, to share how you feel with youth and students, okay? So in a moment, we're gonna watch another quick clip of a video that shows how a teacher models sharing how she feels, but I want you to think about it for yourself, right? So really, when I see or hear that you, okay, so whatever the behavior might be, so you can just write down a behavior there that is a kind of a frustrating behavior that you see or hear in your class or your after school program. And then write, I feel blank. So again, those emotions that we want to model being aware of for youth? You'll write that down. And then would you be willing to? So we want to request that youth do something different, right? So I could say, for example, to that young man, gosh, when I saw you talking to your friend and you were it was distracting to other youth, and I wasn't able to give the directions, I felt frustrated. And I felt worried too, because maybe some other youth wouldn't get the directions for the next activity. Would you be willing to wait to talk to your friend until we go to recess next time? So basically, I'm not blaming or shaming, but I'm pulling that youth aside, that student aside, and just telling him or her or them what I am feeling and then what I would like to request. Okay, so it's a very direct and kind way of communicating with youth as well as modeling for them. So I'd like you to fill out that one, as well as number 4, which is for the video that we just saw. Write down a way you can use this video or a similar activity to lead a lesson for youth or students on being aware of both positive and challenging emotions. Okay, so how could you use this video or another activity if you have maybe emotion words of different varying emotions? How could you use that to explicitly teach youth about being aware of their own emotions? So really right now, just pausing the video for a couple minutes or however long it takes to fill out number 4 and number 5. And then when we come back, I'll show you a short video that will model how a teacher has done this in her classroom. Okay, so I'm going to share the slides again, and hopefully you did have an opportunity to fill out number 4 and number 5 and really reflect and get the most out of this time that we have today. So let me go ahead and share this next video, and then we will wrap up with our reflection, and we will wrap up this time that we have together. Okay. Okay, so this is teaching self-regulation by modeling. I just want to also frame this that this is teaching emotion management, right? So you'll see the teacher really naming what her feelings are, and also that idea of requesting a different behavior from youth. Okay, here we go.
My body is so steady and calm because your bodies are so steady.
I'm not sure why that keeps stopping.
Being able to teach children how to manage their emotions is actually a very important pathway to intellectual learning, because if you can't manage your feelings, it's hard to open up your brain to be able to receive the content that you're trying to learn.
I do a lot of work around self-awareness and being able to name emotions and then make a choice around those. You have a large range of emotions during a school day working with children. Some are completely joyful and so exciting, and some are really frustrating or incredibly disheartening. When you talk when I'm talking, it feels like you're not ready to listen to me. So one of the most authentic ways for me to help them expand their own vocabulary is to use my personal experience with my own emotions in the classroom. When people start talking about other things while I'm still giving directions, it feels frustrating for me, and I have to take a breath, catch myself, and say, it's okay, I'm gonna try again.
One of the critical features of learning is modeling. We learn by watching others. In this classroom, we see the teacher modeling her recognition of her emotions and also modeling how she deals with them in productive ways. And that is the first step in helping children learn to manage their own emotions.
Big breath in. Big breath out.
Like, it's complicated, so we breathe. And that's how so when we're ever going crazy, it helps us calm down.
It's based on real life information. Can you make sure your body's sending a message that you're listening to me? Because it hurts my heart when you look the other way when I'm talking. Thanks, dude. My heart feels much better now. Naming my own emotions and modeling for the students how I can attach a emotional vocabulary word to how I'm feeling and then sort of articulate how I'm processing that is a really authentic way for them to sort of pick up that same skill set. And for them to also see that I, as their teacher, am a real human who's having real feelings during the day, but I'm also doing my best to handle them in a way that is safe and kind and productive. So they recognize that having big feelings are part of being human, but being able to name them and do something about them is really the work we're gonna do together.
All right, so as we are wrapping up, I want you just to think through in that video, you know, that teacher was able to, again, name her emotions and model how she processed through them, which going back to the beginning of our time together here, we talked about teaching youth explicit SEL skills, right? So that emotion management and just teaching them those life skills of when things come up, how do I as an adult process through those in a constructive way? And so really modeling that for youth is key, working on that ourselves. And then if we mess up, which we're always bound to do just because we are human, that we acknowledge that as well. And that's another skill of really taking responsibility and being able to, you know, fix our mistakes. And so those are definitely things as we work to reframe behavior management, really look at what is underneath the behavior for youth and what skills do they need to learn, that we can start addressing those behaviors and responding in ways that will really make a huge difference in that child's life, right? So really putting a different lens on when we see those behaviors happen. And I hope that this presentation today has given you some new skills, new ideas. And let me go ahead and go to the next one here, optimistic closure. So what we're going to do is if you go to your handout packet, there is a reflection question there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for a moment and I will pull that up here. So on that final question, it says, write down how you will look at youth misbehavior differently after this training and how you will help youth to be aware of and manage their own emotions. So again, looking at youth behavior differently, maybe you're going to use the mistaken goal chart. You can print that out, put it on your desk, put it on a clipboard, put it in your pocket, take a picture of it so you have it on your phone. You can refer to it, you know, often as you need to. And then really thinking about how you can help youth be aware and manage their emotions, which will also help them to cooperate more and to get along better in life in general. So go ahead and you can, as you're doing that and writing your reflection, again, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for coming to this training, this presentation. It's really been fun for me, and I hope that everyone has gotten something out of it that they can use. And I'll just put the last slide up here as we close. If you want more information about Primetime Palm Beach County, just make this a little bigger. All right, you can definitely jump on our social media. We have lots of resources, lots of strategies, and you know, really just a lot of resources that we'd love to share with you. You can see our social media handles there, and then also my contact information. Feel free to email me at any time if you have any follow-up questions from this training, so jjones@primetimepbc.org. And again, hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you again for coming to this training.